Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Nations get the government they deserve. We in Zimbabwe, we certainly deserve this corrupt and tyrannical Zanu PF dictatorship, complete with its triple C MDC sidekick. Our failure to appreciate the role of the opposition is unforgivable. We've explained on this platform that if you want a real political change, you have got to accept that Zanu PF cannot reform itself out of power. Now, if you accept that, then the next logical question would be, so how are we going to end the Zanu PF dictatorship? We've accepted Zanu PF will never reform itself out of office. What are we going to do? This question was asked by the people of Zimbabwe. They asked themselves as far back as the late 1990s. This is where the whole idea of electing a competent opposition whose primary task would be to implement the democratic reforms to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. That was the basis. Morgan Tsvangirai and his friends were elected on a ticket that they will bring about the democratic changes required to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. They even named their own party the Movement for Democratic Change. And Zimbabweans followed them. And they've been repeating the slogan, change, change, all these last 25 years. So what is it you were talking about when you were repeating change? Chinjamaitiru. What change were you talking about? By who? The change that we're talking about is implementing the democratic changes that will stop Zanu PF rigging elections. That was the change you're talking about. So now, you look at the 2023 elections. Zanu PF blatantly rigged those elections. No one can dispute that. Zanu PF blatantly rigged those elections. So the logical question was, so what has MDC Triple C been doing these last 25 years? If Zanu PF is still able to rig elections blatantly, and people had risked everything to elect the opposition, to implement the democratic changes, to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, the only logical conclusion is, so what has this opposition's been doing? And the bottom line is, they've sold out. This brings us back to the problem. if the opposition have sold out, then what the nation elected them to do, which is implementing changes necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, has not been done. Why is it so difficult for some people to comprehend that? But clearly, it is. Standing out that this is the real big challenge. The 2023 elections, Nelson Chamisa promised the nation that he was going to implement, that Triple C was going to win big because he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. That was the argument. And millions of people out there believed him. And they participated in those elections believing that Chamisa had plugged the vote rigging loopholes. This is Chamisa telling the nation that he, just a few days before the elections itself, right up to the elections in fact, that he was forming his cabinet because he was absolutely confident that he was going to win the 2023 elections. Indeed, it was God's plan. Hashtag God is in it.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe, nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan ya Mwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
The bottom line is Chamisa lied. He had not plugged the vote rigging loopholes because Zanu PF blatantly rigged those elections. What is so disappointing is that there are millions of people out there who still do not want to believe that he lied. Who believed him when he said he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes and they participated in the elections? But when the elections are rigged, they still don't want to believe that Chamisa had lied to them. That is a contradiction. You say to yourself, well, you know, you're not being rational. And in this particular instance, it is important to understand the consequences of Chamisa telling people to participate. By participating, the people gave Zanu PF legitimacy. That is the critical point. And this is where I say the people then are responsible or deserve this Zanu PF dictatorship. They played their part in giving that dictatorship, the Zanu PF dictatorship, legitimacy by participating in these flawed elections. In his latest ex-handle file, Chamisa is now talking of, I'm fired up. He is fired up. He says, I hear the heartbeat of the citizens of Zimbabwe. The anticipation is immense and massive. The nation is ready. Everywhere I go, Zimbabweans are expectant and prepared. Zimbabweans everywhere are ready to roar. The moment is coming. Are you ready? Hashtag TheNewRise. Hashtag we the leaders. Hashtag citizens' voice. Hashtag God is in it. It is sickening. Here is an individual who has been on the political stage the last 25 years, including the 5 years in the GNU. He has failed to implement even one meaningful democratic change in that period. The logical question one is going to ask, was it because he wasn't fired up? So when he told the people of Zimbabwe to participate in 2023 and telling them that God was in it, he was lying. He was not fired up. And now he's telling us he's fired up. We cannot live running a nation on idiotic nonsense and lies. If the people of Zimbabwe want real change in the country, they've got to accept that they need to elect an opposition that is competent to implement and will implement the democratic reforms necessary to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. It is that simple. All this talk about I'm fired up is just rhetorical nonsense. The truth of the matter is Nelson Chamisa is corrupt, incompetent, a liar, and a conman. We need an opposition that will implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. We already have accepted that Zanu PF will never reform themselves out of office. The question then is, who is going to do it? We need somebody who can implement those reforms. To keep on believing that Chamisa and company can do it is the most idiotic thing we can do. Chamisa lied to the people of Zimbabwe, and he conned them to participate in 2028 as well as 2018, and before that 2013. How many times does he have to do that before the penny finally drops? It is not rocket science. If you want change in Zimbabwe, there are two ways you can do it. You can either wait for Zanu PF to reform himself out of office or elect a competent opposition that will implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. Ever since the late 1990s, we have tried the second, and it has not worked. And keeping believing that Chamisa will do that is the most idiotic thing we can do. I believe if the people of Zimbabwe had not been conned to participate in 2023 elections, for instance, SADC and the AU would have denied Zanu PF political legitimacy and forced the regime to go into a second GNU comparable to 2008. The people were conned and participated in those flawed elections in their millions. And there's the reason why SADC and the AU did not deny that regime legitimacy. We need to wake up. If we are struggling to understand that Chamisa lied even 2 years after the 2023 elections, then all I can say is we deserve this failed state. Because democracy demands that the electorate should be educated, knowledgeable, diligent, and objective. And if we are so ignorant and naive and gullible that we are conned by somebody who has just told a blatant lie that I've plugged for rigging loopholes, to con us to do something that only perpetuates our suffering. And it turns around a few months later and say, now this time I'm really fired up and God is in it. And we still believe him. And sorry, you really deserve to suffer. Nations get the government they deserve. We deserve this corrupt, tyrannical Zanu PF dictatorship, complete with its MDC-CCC sidekick. Why? Because there is absolutely no excuse why we have failed to realize that Zanu PF and MDC-CCC have a very symbiotic relationship. And this is the only reason why MDC-CCC failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years, including the 5 years in the GNU. Think about it. Have a good day.